going to go ahead and get started. My name is Laura Alexander, and I am the director of the Farmer to Farmer Special Program Support Project, which is the program that is putting on this small grants program. I'm joined with two of my colleagues here who I'm going to ask to introduce themselves.
This is Leah D'Amboise, Program Manager at Vega.
And this is Leah Bravort. I work on communications and advocacy at Vega.
And just to get an idea of who's on the call, I'd like to ask each of you to introduce yourselves.
Yeah, this is Dr. Liu from the Fort Valley State University.
Hello, this is Kinsey from the Development Solutions International.
Was that Development Center International?
Solutions International.
Okay, thank you.
This is Dr. Barry Colley from University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff in Arkansas.
Okay, great, welcome. So we've had 3 people introduce themselves. Is there anyone else on the call? Maybe some people who don't have microphones. Leah, do we have other people there?
Yeah, I see there's a few other people on. If you're having any issues and you're on the computer, you can always chat me and try to walk you through how to troubleshoot those.
You put that in the chat too. Okay, great. Well then, we'll just go ahead and get started today. I wanted to set out a little more about the purpose of this pre-bidders conference. Obviously, we have an active request for applications out for small grants under the Farmer to Farmer program, and hopefully everyone has seen the RFA, seen the pre-bidders conference recording, and seen the FAQ that we have on our website, because really we have a lot of information there, and hopefully most of the questions that people have will be answered by those resources. We did want to have a call today, though, to make sure that now that the RFA is out, we give people an opportunity to answer questions related to that RFA and receive clarification if there are any concerns about the information included there. I want to be clear, though, today's call is not about individual project proposals. We can't answer any questions about, your ideas and your projects, such as the goals, scope, design, things like that. Unfortunately, we can't provide any guidance at this time on those type of questions. So most of this call will be question and answer. Want to hear from you, and you can either speak up through your microphone or submit through the chat. But before we get into the Q&A, I do want to mention a few things about the process that we'll be using for this RFA. This is not your last chance to ask questions. Built into the RFA, we have a written question and answer period that allows any applicant or potential applicant to submit a question through our email, f2f@vegaalliance.org, by February 15th. And if you submit a question by that date, we will consolidate all the questions we receive and issue a written response that we will post to our website and also push out to our mailing list. So if there's a question that comes up after today or something that just still wasn't clear in the call, please know that you can email us, and we will be providing written responses to all of those questions shortly after the deadline, which is February 15th. Also want to remind you guys that the concept papers are due on March 6th. Are there any questions at this point about that background information? Great. Silence means no. Want to get started with the Q&A by mentioning just a couple of ground rules and how things will work. As I mentioned, you can either ask questions out loud using your microphone or submit on the chat feature if you're logged in online. We will have a shared screen. Hopefully those of you who are logged in online will be able to see it. But for those of you who are calling in, I want to let you know that there's not any information there that you'll be missing. We're just going to keep track of each of the questions that are asked so that we have a record. We will try to answer all the questions that we can. There might be some questions that we can't answer, and there might be some questions that we just need to circle back and think through a response to. If we have a question like that, we'll let you know that we just need a little bit more time to consider it, and we will issue a response with the response to the written questions. Finally, we are recording this session, and we will post it on our website as well as pushing it out through the email list, the listserv, so that any potential applicant has access to all of this information. With that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it to you guys for questions.
I have a question. This is Barry Colley.
Barry, you're from University of Arkansas, is that right?
Yes.
Great. Go ahead with your question.
When I was reading through the RFP, I don't know, I'm on the phone right now, so I can't pinpoint where in the RFP or RFA, but there was a question about, there was a statement about we needed to have references of prior work that was done, did I understand it, 10 years ago? You want references of our prior work in the area of farmer to farmer that's over 10 years past.
So we're looking at the RFA now, but what it should say is that it has to be no older than 10 years. And to be clear, the references do not need to be for farmer-to-farmer programs. They can be for any related program. We recognize that for this particular RFA, organizations might not have a lot of experience on similar programs. So, you know, past performance on other USAID-funded projects, even if they were different from farmer to farmer, other funders other than USAID, but projects that are related to agriculture or volunteers, all of that would be acceptable as past performance. And what the RFA says is that those projects should be within the last 10 years.
Within the last 10 years. Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Right, Laura, we have a question through the chat box. Does the RFA permit for salaries as per the budget form?
Yes. So it depends on how you're doing your overhead. I think that most applicants will come in direct billing everything or perhaps taking the de minimis rate. But the short answer is personnel can be covered by this grant.
Okay, I'll give somebody else a chance.
No, I think you can go ahead. We'll be here for a while. People can think about their questions while you ask yours.
Okay, maybe I misread this other question I have in the RFA, but or maybe I didn't. I would sources. I'm interested in knowing if there's any published history and evaluation of organizations that have received subcontracts on farmer to farmer.
Yes, there are definitely evaluations of the farmer-to-farmer program. It's been around for more than 30 years now, and each 5-year program cycle has had a final report. They also generally do a midterm evaluation. In terms of the small grants specifically, there are annual reports that highlight their activities. And those they're available on our website, farmertofarmer.org. But the best resource for finding any past performance information is the Development Experience Clearinghouse. And that's a database that USAID runs that all projects are required to submit their evaluations and their reports to. So if you go in there and search for farmer to farmer, you'll find a wealth of information about farmer-to-farmer programs, and it'll be up to you to sort through what's there for, you know, kind of what you're looking for. But that's really the USAID's centralized database for this type of information. As I mentioned, farmer2farmer.org also has a lot on its resources section. And just to be clear, that USAID database is the Development Experience Clearinghouse, DEC.
DEC. So is that dec.org, www.dec.org?
It is DEC, I think it's dec.usaid. dec.usaid.gov.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have any other questions about the request for applications or the evaluation process?
Here's another question. Is it possible to access some proposals that have been funded?
So you can access information about the grants and the projects that have been funded, but we cannot share the proposals that were submitted to Vega for those projects. And the answer to the last question is really the most relevant for that. Searching on farmer2farmer.org as well as the Development Experience Clearinghouse for that information. And those work plans and project reports will give you a pretty good idea of the activities.
I have a question about, is this the first, this is the first run of this program, small grant farmer-to-farmer program?
No, it's not. So the small grant program has been around for 8 or 9 years now. And it first was run by the predecessor to Vega that held the Special Program Support Project. And Vega has been doing it now for 4 years. This is our 4th cycle of these small grants. There is something different this time, though, and that's limiting the competition to minority-serving organizations and institutions only. And we've done that because in the past we've handled the recruitment of minority organizations, minority-serving organizations through a set-aside, but we wanted to provide some additional capacity building in this round of the competition, as well as make sure that we're able to serve as many organizations as possible. And so we've structured this competition in a slightly different way, but we have been doing a small grants program for many years now.
Thank you.
Sure.
Hello. I have a question about the minority serving organization. Does that mean that it is like the self-certification of our organization?
Sorry, can you just say your question one more time?
Yeah, my question is about the minority serving organization. Does it mean that we need to self-certify that, for our organization, we are, I think, they're falling into the category of the governing body with more than 50% membership from the following socially disadvantaged groups. So that means that we need to self-certify ourselves that we are, the more than 50% is coming from the disadvantaged groups.
So you're asking how you demonstrate that within your application?
Yes, exactly, yes.
Yeah. So it's a bit up to you what information you can provide around that, but something like a list of your governing body, identifying which members are members of these presumed disadvantaged groups that we can verify should be sufficient.
Okay. Yeah. I have another question about that the USAID mission, local USAID mission concurrence.
Yes, go ahead.
Do we need to have like the prior approval from them, or it is you will be contacting them?
This is a great question. You do not have to have any prior approval at the concept paper stage. The USAID concurrence is part of the full application stage that is going to be developed collaboratively with Vega, and we'll be working with USAID Washington to reach out to the appropriate contacts in each mission to get their concurrence. We really want to make sure that missions are engaged and supportive of project activities, but we also want to make sure that we are not, you know, approaching them with too many ideas at the concept paper phase.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Can I go to another question?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. Then I have this going back to the past performances. Our organization haven't done yet with the USAID, but we have done with the local government and local organizations in the country. We plan to have a proposal. So is that enough to have like the past performance references from the local government?
So for past performances, this is a good question. For the past performance references, choose those projects that are most closely related to this work. We recognize that every organization is going to have diverse experiences, and we need to get the best information possible, but work with what you have and provide references that are the most relevant.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
We have another question.
Can I ask a question?
Through the chat?
Could you just hold off 1 second? We have one that came in through the chat we'll address and then come right back to you, okay?
But this is fantastic. We have all these questions.
Yes, we love questions.
So this is similar to the mission concurrence. If there is an existing farmer-to-farmer program in a country, will it be necessary to get their approval?
So this is, again, concurrence, not necessarily approval, but we are looking for alignment with other farmer-to-farmer programs that are existing in current countries. We don't want to be funding activities that duplicate efforts. And so, as described in the RFA, we will be asking for concurrence from farmer-to-farmer implementers that are in a country that you might be proposing to work in.
What stage does that happen?
I think that's in phase 2. We're going to double check, and I think that's part of phase 2. I'll check that. Thank you. We had a question on the phone.
Can I?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, can I ask, I guess, can you hear me, first of all? I'm not sure. I came in late. Okay. So the question is related to the last.
Sorry, can you let us know who you are and where you're calling from since you joined late?
Sure. My name is Lazar. I'm calling from Guinea. I'm implementing a GDA program here funded by USAID.
Okay.
So my question is related to the last. Concurrence, I understand. What about layering, where there may be an existing farmer-to-farmer activity, but that may not cover a specific geography that I might think deserves coverage because of the work that's currently taking place in Guinea. Is that something you would welcome, or that would be lumped under concurrence?
It would come under concurrence.
Activity.
And what I can say is we're looking for projects that do not duplicate existing efforts. Right? So if you're making a compelling case for a program that does not duplicate efforts with a current activity, we would anticipate that any implementer in the country would be able to provide concurrence.
Okay. Very good. That's fine. Thank you.
We have another question in the chat. Our expertise is in marine biomass to produce energy and food. Does that fit under the areas supported by farmer-to-farmer?
It would depend a little bit on the focus of your project, and we can't necessarily speak to individual project proposals, but I will say that anything that addresses food production is well within the farmer-to-farmer objectives, and we have in the past funded programs related to aquaculture. Do we have other questions related to the RFA? Great. Well, it sounds like maybe everyone's tapped out, that most things are pretty clear. Oh, we have one coming in.
I got. So a follow-up on that same question, referring to the energy and food.
Mm-hmm.
What about forestry? Does that fall under farmer to farmer? Is forestry supported by farmer to farmer?
So I don't really have much of a better answer for you than I did the last time. The RFA does outline the areas in which farmer to farmer works, which are focused on agriculture and food security. And so I think that you should look closely at the RFA, and if your forestry program aligns with the objectives laid out there, then I would encourage you to submit an application, because, I mean, forestry is pretty broad. I can't speak to that. But you know, I have to defer to the program description in the RFA.
Another question, is there a preference between core, aligned, and other countries?
No, any country that's listed in the country annex as eligible is considered equally. It's not part of the evaluation criteria, whatever country the project is being proposed in.
This is Barry Colley from Arkansas, University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff again. Could you explain that difference between the core and aligned countries, or is it spelled out in the RFP? I won't bore you if it's already spelled out.
Well, it should be pretty clear in the RFA, but I don't mind answering. What the other participant was referring to is a country that already has a core farmer-to-farmer program and a country that does not. So there are 6 other core implementer organizations other than Vega, and each of them covers a different region of the world and has country programs active within it. And so we've listed in our annex all of the countries that are eligible for small grant funding, and we've shown in that table which currently have a core program, because referring back to another participant's question, if there is an active core program, then we need to get concurrence of that program. And so that's why we flagged it in the annex for you, so that you're aware whether or not that will be an issue for your proposal.
Okay, that was helpful. Thank you.
Sure. Do we have any other questions on the chat?
Nope.
No? We'll hang out for another minute, let you guys think a bit more. All right, well, if we don't have any more questions, I think we'll wrap it up for today. Just going to emphasize one more time, this is not your last chance to ask questions. You can submit a written question to f2s@vegaalliance.org by February 15th and receive a written response, not directly, but consolidated and posted to the website and distributed through our listserv. After that time, however, we will not be able to answer further questions. So please go back over the materials, think through your applications, and get your questions in by the 15th, because after that time, unfortunately, we will not be able to respond.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Sure. Thanks to you all for participating, and we look forward to receiving all your applications.
Okay. Thank you. Goodbye.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.